and welcome to Oche Oche Oche. We've decided to set up a space where we can just discuss all things Welsh darts, given that we have the current world champion and world number one, the Masters champion, we're World Cup winners, and of course, not forgetting that Wayne Warren was the last player to win the BDO World Championship as well. Can't forget that one, of course. And, you know, it's just such a really good time for Welsh darts, as we were discussing prior to recording this. You know, the two tournaments that have been won in 2021 have been by Welshmen. You know, I think interest, looking through Twitter, interest is at an all-time high. So we just wanted to create a nice environment where we can come together and talk darts. Everyone's welcome. We want to make this, you know, an open discussion for everyone to be involved with. So without further ado, I'm Abigail, and Sian and Dylan are also part of this, but we do really want to encourage you guys to interact with us and share your viewpoints as well. So yeah, we are, of course, I forgot to mention there where I was introducing people, we're going to be joined by Johnny Clayton Poster as well in all of these, because as the great man once said himself, there's always room for a ferret. God.
And never underestimate the ferret.
Absolutely never, which we can't do after the weekend that's just gone, because as we all know, his name is now engraved in the Masters trophy forever. What a win. Let's start by that. Sian, we'll come to you first. You're nodding. How great was that on Sunday night?
Oh, it was. I think for a lot of darts fans, especially Welsh darts fans, it was like a dream come true, because, you know, Gezi was brilliant all tournament. You know, you thought, oh, he's got it in the bag. You know, he's gonna take this, and then, you know, just Johnny was just playing absolutely unbelievable darts. It was like this confidence that he can play anyone, he can beat anyone. You know, he wasn't missing, and that James Wade match with the record 91%. I mean, it was just like, what am I watching? I don't know if you felt the same.
Yeah, no, you know, like you said, Sian, I think the belief was just there this weekend. You know, I think the ability's always been there. Nobody's doubted that. But I think there was some sort of can-do attitude where you had to kind of scrape him off the hockey this weekend. And, you know, nobody can deny him the title, because, you know, you look at the names, D'Souza, MVG, Wade, Wright, and then, you know, King in the final, you know, absolutely fantastic. And I couldn't be happier for Johnny. You know, he's one of these likable characters on tour. Everybody mentions, you know, nobody's got a bad word to say about him. And I was just so chuffed for him. And, you know, and like you say, the Welsh boys bookending the title, the PDC titles in January. You know, has Welsh darts ever been in a better place? You know, I don't think it has.
I saw Wayne Mardle did a tweet. Wayne Mardle did a tweet that said, Wales is the new Stoke-on-Trent.
I saw that. That was great. That was my favourite tweet, I think, of the weekend. And it just, you know, with Johnny Clayton, did you both feel as well? It just felt, you know, we've seen him. We know that he has this quality, but so often we see him. And I think when he plays MVG, that's one of the matches I always look forward to, because it's always a good contest, regardless of which one comes out on top. It's always a really, really good contest with high averages. But you sometimes see him, he'll put in one or two good displays, and we see what he's about. But then the next match, he'll drift into the ones, the fives, or his finishing isn't there. His counting might be off. But, you know, this weekend, it just, every single match, even when he went two legs behind, say, you just never felt that his head dropped, or he was not going, Johnny back, you know, like you sometimes see him doing up there. It was just, he just had so much control. Yeah. And it just, the thing is as well that I think helps him is, I don't think he believes or knows how good he is.
Yeah, no, I'd agree.
He just has so much fun.
I think ironically, you know, everybody would have thought, you know, the MVG game was the game he'd have to really pull out all the stops. But when you look at the averages from the weekend, that was his worst performance, you know, on average wise. So it's mad to think, really, you know, that, you know, your worst performance could come against probably, you know, one of the best players in the world, but then still come through.
But then Peter Wright was playing absolutely brilliantly as well all weekend. It was like he was back on form. He looked confident. He was, you know, like, oh my gosh, it could be an upset here. So, you know, I know MVG obviously, but also the other the other quality of players that he beat, you know, they were on form as well. It wasn't sort of like, well, he got lucky, or, you know, like, yeah, it was not a great match. I mean, that was the best thing about the Masters, I think. I'm so glad it was 24 rather than 16.
Yeah.
But I mean, all the matches were such high quality. It was just great to see. It was almost like a continuation from the end of the Worlds, that same quality carried on.
It was, yeah. I was going to mention the format, you know, because I'd seen a lot of talk pre-tournament. People weren't really in agreement with the expanded format, and I couldn't really see the issue with it, you know. I saw an interview with Barry Hearn the other day where he said he offered an extra session to ITV and they bit his hand off, sort of thing, you know. But then, you know, the two finalists, world number 18, world number 20, it just proves, you know, at the moment, you know, really the top 32 on their day, even the top 128, you know, every tour card holder, you know, you have an off day, somebody's there to pick you off, and, you know, just a brilliant tournament and a great way to start the year, really.
You know, that's exactly.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. That's exactly what Gerwyn Price said as well. I spoke to him before the Masters, and that's exactly what he said. He said, whereas before it might have been like the top, you know, 4 or 8 players that could win. He's like, any single one of those players that are in the Masters, those 24, is that any of them can win a tournament now. Like, he's like, that is how high the standard is. So I think they're all quite aware of that as well as players. You know, they don't underestimate each other, or they sort of give their opponents the sort of respect that they deserve. And I think that's why darts is quite exciting at the moment, because, you know, it is like that question of who's going to win each match, and it's not like, oh, he's the overwhelming favorite anymore. It's just like, oh, anyone can win. It's who turns up and what darts are played. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think a lot of it does stem from, you know, they're playing each other so frequently on the Pro Tour. You know, you could be playing MVG 3 times in the space of a week now that they've got, you know, the summer series. So I do think that fear factor has gone. I know a lot of players have talked about it, but you just, because you're so used to playing these top players week in, week out, you could be the world number 100, but you're so used to being up on that, you know, being on stage or sharing the hockey with Michael Van Gogh, and that it just doesn't phase you anymore. Whereas previously you might not have played him before. You get up on that big stage, you hear his walk-on music, and it's just, you know, you can be quite overwhelmed by it. But I think people are just so comfortable playing it now, which is such a massive part of it. And it's why we're seeing such high averages week in, week out. Yeah.
And I think another factor there is, you know, you say they could play each other maybe twice over a weekend in a Pro Tour. You know, these majors now are sterile environments, really, you know, similar to a Pro Tour, although you're in a massive hall, you know, you could hear a pin drop there, sort of thing. So, you know, does somebody like Michael Van Gerwen need that crowd maybe to make him get that, you know, a step up or an advantage on somebody? You know, me and Abby were talking a little bit earlier about, you know, it's taken people a long time to get used to no crowds, but, you know, it's going to take time to adapt, to go back to the old way, I find now, because people are going to be so used to that sort of sterile, quiet environment, although we got that fake noise being pumped into the hall. You know, when you get crowds back and that whistling maybe that you weren't used to for the last 10 months, you know, it's going to throw some players, isn't it?
And it's the pressure of having eyes back on you, isn't it? You know, you probably don't realise it, and maybe players don't even realise it yet. What difference it'll make having people there who are actually scrutinizing every single thing you do. You know, all the fan noise is positive. So, you know, when you do start getting that jeering and different things going on, it'll be quite interesting to see. But of course, none of us can wait to be back in a venue with a beer and just having a great time at the darts, obviously. And who'd have thought before lockdown that we'd be doing it in such a great position?
You know,
I mean, everyone's just saying, imagine what the Premier League would be like with fans back in Cardiff. I mean, now with Johnny and Gezi, you know, it would be. I just hope it's sort of delayed enough. You know, I was just thinking the other day, it might just be like the over 75s who've had all their jabs. They might be the only people allowed in, and they'll be like setting the standard of, you know, what life's going to be like afterwards. But I mean, that would be incredible, wouldn't it, to see that, you know.
I don't know about you girls, but I was lucky enough to be in Cardiff for the Premier League last February, and you know, we were lucky to get a crowd because we were one of the first nights, weren't we? But, you know, having two Welshmen on the bill, it was just, you know, I'd been there in previous years when Gezi was on his own. Was it maybe Mark Webster a couple of years before? But having both of them there, it just took the expectation, the atmosphere up to a completely different level. And, you know, Johnny changing his walk-on song, obviously, to Delilah, you know, my God.
Best ever walk-on.
Goosebumps.
It was genuinely, I did like Willie O'Connor's, when Willie O'Connor walked onto Zombie in Dublin, that did, I thought, fair play. You've rivaled Johnny there. You've not won it, but you've rivaled him.
I know. And Hendo in Aberdeen always gets a mention, doesn't it? You know,
the bagpipes.
But yeah, I suppose we can be a little bit biased on here, can't we?
And I think as well, you know, it's so good because we were all there for that Premier League game. And of course, Michael Smith delivered one of the performances where you just do not compete with Michael Smith when he's in that form. So it's just great. I remember seeing Johnny after that, and he came into the press room and he just still had a massive smile on his face. And he just ran, like he walked up to Michael Smith and he was, you know, giving him a hug. And it's just so good that he's now getting an opportunity to properly contest in that Premier League, because yes, I do think he was good enough last year, but you know, you only get that one match. And as I said, when you play against Michael Smith in that form, you don't get anything from it. So I'm just so happy that he gets a full whack at it.
Yeah. I think that was one of the benefits maybe of the contender challenger role. You know, it was a one-off. You had your chance if you won, was it like 1,500 quid, I think, or a draw, you'd get £1,000. But it
gave you a taste of it, though.
Oh, definitely. And a shop window, you know, a lot of people I know watch Premier League who don't really watch much of the darts. So, you know, Johnny his profile would have gone up that night. I think now being, you know, included in the 2021 version, you know, it is a completely different challenge, isn't it? You know, it depends how quickly we do get back to crowds, but it's that traveling, you know, you probably leave home on a Wednesday, bit of media on Thursday, play on a Thursday, and then travel to the Pro Tour event on a Saturday. So it'll be a completely different challenge to Johnny, but you know, I'm sure it's another challenge which Johnny will just take in his stride, sort of thing, you know.
Especially when you get the Euro tours as well, because obviously a Euro tour, you leave straight from the Premier League on the Thursday night and then fly to wherever that Euro tour. Please let us have some Euro tours if there are darting gods, please.
Yeah, I think that's as well, like Johnny, he spoke before the Masters, he said, you know, like one of his dreams for 2021 would be to get into the Premier League, you know, like probably a lot of the players. And I think, you know, he had that as his goal, and he was obviously playing so well. And, you know, he did say in the back of his mind, you know, probably the person who does the best in the Masters is going to get that last slot. So I'm sure, you know, as he went into that final, he had that in the back of his mind. But you know, just the fact that he won that as well as the Masters, like, you know, it is like just amazing. It's like Christmas is all at once, isn't it? Literally, like the two things. And you know, for him to have achieved that goal, you know, it's just massive. That, and you know, he deserved it. There's no one that would argue with that based on his performances. It's just thrill for him. It's just such a brilliant result. And yeah, I'm sure he'll enjoy every minute of it, like we all were watching it.
I've got to say he handled the occasion so much better than I did in my living room. That's for certain. Like, honestly, if he had reacted anywhere near how I had reacted, I think they would have had to have taken it off air, because I just did not control myself one bit.
Did you actually do a knee slide in Morrison's the next day?
I did a knee slide down the corridor in the house, so I didn't take it outside the house. But it was just, supporting Johnny over the past few years and seeing him maybe not get the rewards that his performances have deserved. You know, there have been games, I'm sure we've all done it, when you're watching a Pro Tour weekend and his game's not on the streamed board, and you're watching it on Dart Connect and you're just waiting, as Dylan always says, you're just waiting for it to go yellow. But watching a game that way, you know, and all those years of watching him and seeing him put in so many good performances, and just, you know, his finishing might not be there for one game, or his scoring power's off slightly, and just seeing everything come together. It was just such an outpour of emotions that I think we all had, and our group chat certainly saw.
I think, but I love the fact he said that he miscounted it. Like, again, he thought it was best of 25.
Oh, he did, yeah.
That's why his reaction was like it was, because he didn't actually realise he won. I love that.
But for a man who didn't even know he was in the tournament,
exactly.
I think that's quite fitting for him to win it that way. You know, it's just, everything about him is just so likeable.
Yeah.
But who'd have thought as well, you know, we have to say, who'd have thought that, you know, when we discussed whether we were going to start talking about darts online, and who would have thought that the majority would be taken up by a little Ferret and not the world champion? You know, it's just, we're in such a healthy place that it's like, we've just got so much excitement now in Welsh darts.
Oh, definitely.
And, you know, obviously in the Masters, I think it's fair to say that Gezi took to being world number one very well, didn't he? You know, it was nice to see that interaction with the cameras and see that different side of him.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. You know, I thought he commanded himself very well all weekend. You know, obviously being world number one, it must put huge pressure on his shoulders, but you know, you're like you're saying, playing with the camera, we're just seeing little sides to Gezi that we haven't seen before. You know, and on the stage, he looked. There was an aura about him. You know,
he seemed much more relaxed, much more confident, like smiling, much more sort of. He's still focused, but I don't know, enjoying it. I thought he just looked like he was enjoying it.
Yeah,
I wonder how much of that is that now he knows that fans are on side. You know, he did. I wouldn't want to put words in his mouth, but it did feel like he didn't mind the booing at the beginning, but then it kind of became out of control.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was unfair and it was horrible to watch at one stage. But now to have won the Fans Player of the Year award, and you see how much that means to him. So I wonder how much that plays into it. He just feels more confident around people now, knowing that they respect and like him.
Yeah, that's a good point, I think, because, you know, I think the rock bottom was the Grand Prix against Chizzy, wasn't it? That was hard to watch personally as a fan. But, you know, I've heard him in a few interviews where he said, you know, his destiny, I think, was always to win the World Championship. But I think the way the crowds have handled him, have dealt with him, have fast forwarded his career maybe by 2 or 3 years. And I kind of agree with every word he says there. I think he's matured as a player, matured as a person. You know, the mindset was the issue. I have no qualms in saying that sort of thing. You know, once he got his head sorted and able to handle situations, you know, success was just something that was going to follow quite easily. And, you know, I can see him maybe winning 2, maybe 3 of the World Championships in the future.
I just felt this weekend watching the Masters that it was just like watching Gerwyn winning matches easily, which I was like, why did I, you know, I was like, after he'd, you know, won his first few matches, I was like, what's different? And I was like, oh, it didn't go to like a last leg decider. Oh, you know, like he was dominant. And I was like, you know, just not used to seeing that in a way with him, because he likes the fight back. He likes sort of, you know, the battle. And, you know, obviously the last few, you know, in the World Championship, we went to a lot of deciding legs as well and the deciding sets. And I just felt like, I'm not used to seeing him winning that easily in a way. And I don't know, like it was quite a strange feeling, a great feeling, a nice feeling, because it was like, you know, he always says, doesn't he, at the end of some things, like he puts his family through it and they must, you know, be watching it like and I felt like as a fan it was just like a chance to be like, you know, he's storming it, he's just in complete control. And I wasn't used to that after watching him. I was just like, this is a new feeling, but I love it, it's fine.
But, you know, going back to Johnny with the Premier League, you know, there's been a lot of talk since, people think, you know, he's got in the back door maybe. But, you know, when you look at his 2020 season, you know, he was up there with one of the form players. You know, you're looking semi-final of the UK Open, semi-final of the European Championship, probably should have beaten Peter Wright, you know, for that miscount. Final of the German Darts Championship, and then, you know, the World Cup. You know, I would class that as a major, really, you know, when you class the tournament. So, you know, I feel sorry for Chizzy being world number 6. He hasn't been chosen, but I think Johnny's there on merit, you know, to be fair to the guy.
And as we were saying before, you know, I think it's such a big thing. You've mentioned that's a very good season, or a very good year that he had last year. But I think it's so important, you know, when they won, or when we won the World Cup, it was very much Gerwyn Price has won it with Johnny Clayton. Now, obviously, as diehard Ferret fans, we've seen what his year has been like, but I think a lot of people that maybe don't watch a lot or just know of Gezi might not have realised how much of a role Johnny played in that victory. So I think it's very good as well for him to kind of be like, no, I'm more than an equal partner here, because he is, and what he contributes is maybe more than he got credit for with that World Cup win, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. That there were a few tricky matches early on. Don't get me wrong. I think Gezi did probably, carry us through in one or two. But then, the strength that weekend was the pairing, wasn't it? Whenever they were called upon as a pair, I think they averaged something like 104 over the weekend as a pair. It's going to take a special performance to beat that. And, after we got past Australia in the quarters, nobody really pushed us, did they? So, and again, saying that Gezi might be a multiple world champion, I can see these two, being a tough pairing to beat in World Cups to come as well, And
do you know what other thing? Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I'm already excited for when, the next one comes along and be like defending champions. I'm just excited that will be her, and it will be like, yes,
Yeah. And you know what, thinking about the calendar, in Wales, where I don't feel we get our fair share of tournaments. We get one Premier League night and that's about it. Now we've got world number one, world champion, Johnny on the rise. You'd like to think that the PDC board would be looking maybe, once crowds are allowed back, to kind of give a fair share of tournaments. I know we had the Champions League a few years ago and there was an issue maybe with ticket sales around one or two sessions, but I'd like to think now with the success of the boys, we might be able to get a tournament. Johnny mentioned in an interview recently, maybe the Masters, but maybe, who knows, the World Cup was defending champions. That wouldn't be too bad at the most point, would it? Yeah.
The Millennium Stadium, just think big.
Yeah, absolutely. The Millennium was selling out. How great was it as well in one of Ferret's interviews during the Masters, when he was like, I taught Gezi everything he knew. I gave him so many tips. I just need to start taking them myself. And it was so fitting that he said that in a tournament that he went on to bloody win. Like, it's just,
mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
What was your favourite moment from the weekend? Like the win, or was it another part, or was it the interviewing? Well,
you know what? The one, I'm quite an emotional guy. I'm a proud Welshman, and when I see, especially with the darts, when I see these boys do well, when you follow them on the pro tour throughout the year, I report on their success. But when they do it on the TV, and people are seeing it maybe for the first time, it does really get to me, because I think, good on you boys, you've made a name of yourself. And I think it was that reaction, when John McDonald said you're in the Premier League, it was just like, I think he looked up to the sky and was like, you know what, I've made it. And like you said earlier, Sian, 31 years of hard graft, pubs, clubs, different tournaments. When you eventually get to the pinnacle of the sport, it must be, feel so good. And for us as fans, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think that sums it up perfectly. Although I will argue, Dylan, that when he looked up, I think he was actually saying, don't swear, don't swear, don't swear. I don't think he was actually saying anything profound or anything. I think he was just going, don't swear on national TV. I think that was probably it. But it was just, and even, the moment where he came back and beat James Wade, because as you said earlier, Sian, like, all the players he's beaten have been playing well. When he beats MVG, some people might be going, well, MVG's had a dip in form, and then he beats Wade and you start going, okay, but MVG was playing well as well against him, and then beat the Raptors. So it was the moment, because like we said before, normally for Ferret, he'll have a good game or two good games, and then the next he'll average 89. But it was just the consistency and just he was so focused and so concentrated, and you just knew that he was on a mission that weekend. I've never seen a Ferret on a mission before, but I like the way they look.
I love it. You have to get a Ferret as well, but
I did. I said
you're gonna have to get one.
As soon as that winning dart went in, I was like, I'm looking for a ferret. That's the only way we can really recognise this moment.
Crown the championship. I have to say, I loved obviously all the Johnny moments, but I did love when we heard Gerwyn Price being announced as world champion for the first time. I think that was, such a moment, and to, it's something we're all kind of waiting for to hear. And when Joe Cullen was like clapping him on the stage as well, that respect, and it wasn't how he wanted it to be. He would have loved it with the crowd there, like us all. But I think, that was quite special, and it's kind of sunk in then. It was like, yes, he is the world champion, champion of the world. And it was just, I love that. For me, that was also a great moment, like a highlight, something different, but still like, great to hear and witness and see. And then, the performance against Joe Cullen, who's also playing brilliantly. I mean, absolutely incredible performance. So, that was, I enjoyed watching that too.
Well, similarly to you, I've been asked a few times what my standout moment from the Worlds has been. And obviously Gezi winning it has been superb. But for me, genuinely, my highlight was seeing Jamie Lewis back on the big stage and playing so well, looking so healthy, and just back enjoying himself. I was able to catch up with him a few times as well. And just seeing him in such a good space. I think that for me was my highlight of the World, seeing him. Obviously he's had his mental health battles, and that all culminated on a weekend playing darts, and the abuse he received online after that was unacceptable. But just to see the way he's gone and got himself help, and then being able to get a backup on that Ali Pali stage, which when you have anxiety, how difficult it is to even get up on a stage, and to put in those performances was really, really, that's what made me the happiest throughout that tournament, to be honest. And he'll be in Q School in a couple of weeks' time.
I'm so hopeful that he gets his tour card back.
If he carries that form in that he showed, because he was 2-0 down against Luke Woodhouse, and he showed, real character. I don't know, there's something about that stage that brings out the best in Jamie, and, one or two darts could have gone a different way against Gezi. The result could have been so different. But like you say, on that Euro tour where I think he'd probably hit rock bottom, wasn't it? It was a 57 average. Yeah. But obviously, he had his issues off the hockey. But I think, the PDC have been really helpful, the PDPA. Absolutely. So kudos to them, really, in terms of giving him the help he needs. But going to Q School, things are looking on the up for Jamie. So that can only be a good thing.
Absolutely.
32 Welsh players going into Q School?
On the last count, 32, 33,
Who are we fancying the most? Obviously, Jamie. We want to see Richie Burnett, don't we? We've seen him on that streaming board last year. That was such a highlight of 2020, seeing him back on a streaming board. It's just so exciting, isn't it? We've not even mentioned Nick Kenny, who's also, also playing the darts of his life.
Yeah. I was impressed with Nick against Dirk Telnikers, because tough cookie in Telnikers, really. And Nick mentioned in his interviews he was shaking like a leaf on that stage. And to be fair, anybody who experienced, I think it's just you've been there, Abby. The size of the stage, the scale of the thing is enough to make anybody shake, sort of thing, isn't it? So to be fair to Nick, I thought he put up a good fight. I thought what Demeanor was a really good draw for him, because Jermaine obviously on his day is a brilliant player, but of that top 32 player on his day, he can be really erratic as well. And I really thought Nick would get the better of him, but unfortunately not. But for the first year on the tour, qualifying for the Worlds, that stands him in good stead going into this year, doesn't it?
I'm so glad that we've got a Super Series as well.
Absolutely.
Brilliant news.
Yeah. And do you know what? I've got to say, like, the PDC obviously have done incredibly well throughout lockdown. But, it really is something, just having darts back on TV in January, it does really lift you at this time, doesn't it? And as you said, the standard from the off okay, a lot of people I saw saying, the Friday just felt like a qualifier for the main event or whatever. So what? It was a good standard of darts,
Yeah.
and it was on our TV.
Exactly.
I don't care how it comes to us.
Yeah.
Exactly. I know it's just giving the players as well, like it was like the home tour, wasn't it? That was the first sort of competitive sport to start back again after lockdown. It was like, yes, darts, it was just brilliant, and fair play to the PDC, as you said, for putting it on and trying to make as many tournaments as possible, because we were looking at the calendar thinking, oh, there's a bit of a gap now, until the UK Championship.
Yeah, it's their livelihood, isn't it? You forget that outside of, well, I'd say the top 20, you've got a lot of players who maybe aren't winning things. So that financial income is vital for them.
It is, yeah. Going back to your point with the Q School, who are we looking at as maybe hopes? Well, I kind of made a list of the Welsh boys, and it goes from Warren, who's late 50s, to Louis Williams, who's 19. And, I've been following Louis's career very, very closely, watching a lot of his online games during lockdown. Yeah. And I tell you what, this kid looks the real deal. 100 average is a walk in the park for Louis. I think we saw on the challenge tour, he played against Richie Burnett. Well, you can imagine he was 18. Yeah, he was 18 then, playing against Richie Burnett. Obviously, Louis would have known he was a legend in the game of darts, and then he goes up and beats him with 117 average. So, people do that from time to time, but Louis is somebody who can actually do that on a regular basis. So obviously Louis is in that final stage, because Q School now has been broken up into 2 stages. But one I've been keeping an eye on, really, and might be a bolt from the pack in the first stage, is Justin Smith. Justin's a young guy from Cardigan, good friends with Jamie Lewis. Played a lot of darts in lockdown on the Modus tour. And if things click with Justin, there's another dangerous customer. But we all know, as Q School works, you have an off game, and it's unfortunately that's the end of the day for you. So yeah, as well as Wayne Warren and Jim Williams being strong characters and strong contenders, I think if we're looking for youngsters, Louis and Justin are definitely 2 to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think it's definitely fair to say the strength in depth that we now have is so exciting, and I think I'd say that's a good place to end this first episode. On such a high, we've got players who are achieving on the tour, and then we've got so many players up and coming that we can look at as well. So what we really want to say, I think we're all in agreement, we'd just love to make this a community where darts fans from Wales can come together. We've seen it on social media. There's so many of us out there now. It's just it'd be so good, especially during lockdown, to bring us all together and let's just talk darts.
Let us know, like, comments and send Dylan on PDC Cymru, any of us, like DMs or messages, and any ideas, people you want us to chat to. I mean, we've got a list of ideas. Hopefully, we should get guests on and chat to them, and we'd like you to ask the questions as well that you've got, rather than sending them in. Like, you can come and join in and ask them as well. So just get in touch. That'd be great.
No, and just, as the person who runs PDC Cymru, I just want to thank everybody who supported me, really. It's been 2 years. It's been a roller coaster. Over the last week, people have said, did you have a crystal ball? Did you know what was coming? And they're like, it was a hobby. It was something. I was a frustrated fan, like everybody. I just felt maybe these boys weren't getting enough sort of, mainstream media covering it, sort of thing. So I'm glad to say 2 years later, the channel's in a good place and people are really engaging, and that's exactly what we want. Like Sian and Abby has said, we want you to get involved, and it's somewhere for us to all have a chat and to celebrate the success, which is ongoing and hopefully in the future.
Absolutely. And also, we want to do that in an environment that kind of feels like we're watching the darts. It's just, in all seriousness, we do just want to make it as good an atmosphere we can, and to try, and we can't replicate what it's like to have a pint together at the darts, but you know, to just kind of make it an environment where we can just discuss what we discuss if we were able to meet up. So I think this could be quite an important community for us.